Coming up during week 215 of Brada's Branded Thoughts, an exclusive interview with one of the more underrated dark horse recruits from Iowa football's 2023 class. We're talking about Harlan, Iowa native Aiden Hall, a guy who was recruited by the likes of Army, Air Force, Minnesota, picked Iowa ultimately, and brings a very unique skill set and just a hardworking attitude to Iowa City. He'll get here in June. We'll talk with him coming up on the show. Plus, my official pick and score prediction for Iowa women's basketball, their big Final Four showdown Friday night against the number one undefeated South Carolina Gamecocks. Coming up during week 215 of Brada's Branded Thoughts. This is from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Straight from the man cave Kinnick under the kitchen, authentic, original player art prints are being drawn up for Hawkeye fans everywhere. From under the kitchen's Murray Legacy print, which features former Hawkeye Kenyon Murray, current Hawkeye Chris Murray, and current Sacramento King Keegan Murray, to football players Lucas Van Ness, Torrey Taylor, and Cooper DeJean, to wrestlers Tony Cassiope, Alex Marinelli, and Real Woods. Oh, and only one of the greatest athletes to ever compete at Iowa, Spencer Lee. There are so many options available, and they make great gifts. Visit Under the Kitchen on Facebook or at Under the Kitchen's new website. It's underthekitchen.square.site. That's underthekitchen.square.site. Check out Under the Kitchen today and get your authentic, original Hawkeye print. All right, let's get to our next Iowa signee. Aiden Hall is with us. Mr. Aiden Hall, how are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you?
I am doing wonderful. This is a big day for you. Let's talk about, first of all, talk about how you feel. This is you have been waiting for this day for a while. You've been locked into your commitment for quite some number of months. What's it feel to finally be a part of the Iowa Hawkeyes?
It feels good. It's been a dream of mine to be able to play for the Hawks. Growing up in a small town, we've always been a Hawkeye fan. Today to finally make it official and sign that letter of intent, it just means the world. I'm super excited for this next stage of my life.
I'll piggyback off our last caller before we get to football and what you're going to give Iowa on the football field. You and I have never talked. I've never had, I'd love to have you on a longer interview at some point, but we got to kind of familiarize people here with your background. What drew you to the Iowa coaching staff? Who was your primary recruiter? Who are you close with? Tell us a little bit about your recruitment.
Coach Woods is definitely the primary recruiter for me. He covers my area. I talked to Coach Parker, Coach Wallace. Those guys recruited me. I could play both positions there. We have a good relationship with each other. They were coming to my basketball games last year. So I've known the staff for a while. They're a great group. It's a family feel. They know how to get guys to the next level. That kind of drew me towards them. So.
And again, piggybacking off our last caller, you're coming to Iowa despite the fact that we are part of an NIL and transfer portal era where money seems to be king at times. You're coming to Iowa not only to be a football player, but a student athlete. What are your goals? I mean, I'm assuming you probably want to play in the NFL if things go the way you anticipate them going, but talk about your aspirations.
So eventually, I'd like to get to the NFL. That's every kid's dream, I feel like. I'd like to get to the NFL. This first year, my goal is to get on special teams. See what I can do there. And then, after that, get a starting spot, and then, hopefully win some championships, whether it's Big Ten or a national championship. I'd say we all have that goal, all of us recruits. So, yeah.
You have a fascinating recruiting list, and I'm talking about schools that recruited you. It's not often you look at an Iowa prospect, Aiden, and you see Army and Air Force, and then you mix in, a Power 5 offer from Minnesota, and I'm grabbing this off 247 Sports. North Dakota State, that's a power at the FCS level. You had a lot of options. I mean, there's no shortage of options for Aiden Hall. What caused you to be? I know you said you grew up a Hawkeye fan. Was there any doubt? What caused you to be so locked into being a Hawk?
I'd say as soon as they offered. I mean, even like at the start, like when I started getting a lot of these FCS offers, I was thinking like, if Iowa offers, like I'm definitely committing. So yeah, as soon as they did, it's been a dream of mine, and getting up on campus and actually seeing it in person, just made me realize even more that this is a place for me. Um, but yeah, I would have liked to gone up and checking out Minnesota, but it's a bit of a time crunch. So yeah, I kind of just had to make that decision. So yeah, I'm happy with it.
How much was obviously they offered, but I mean, Air Force and Army. Um, what's it like being recruited by those schools? I mean, that has to be kind of a unique experience. We do a post game show with Coach John Patterson, who was an assistant coach under Hayden Fry. He played at Army, so
Uh,
we always get an interesting perspective from him. But tell us what it was like being recruited by those guys.
it's a little, I don't know. I would honestly say it's pretty similar just to being recruited by any other school. I mean, it kind of happens fast. Like both schools just reached out, wanted to get on the phone. Nothing. We didn't talk prior. Um, but yeah, they want to get on the phone. And then they offered me both schools. And then Army, I would say they had a different coach calling me like for a week. It was like a different coach for like 6 7 days straight. Um, so yeah, it's definitely interesting. But yeah.
And talk a little bit about your relationship with Kirk. I mean, I know you have your primary recruiter. You talked about LeVar Woods, but Kirk Ferentz is the dean of college football.
Yeah.
What's it like knowing that you're going to play for a guy who I don't want to say the oldest because that's probably unfair to him, but a guy who's been
Yeah.
around the game as long as anybody.
It's awesome. He runs a stable program. Getting to talk to him, getting to meet him. Um, he's a great guy. He was one of the first coaches to come to my games last year in Denison. Him and Coach Woods came all the way up from Denison, which is a 4 hour drive. So that really shows a lot, about the person he is. So yeah, we have a good relationship. Him and my dad loves the guy. Growing up watching Coach Ferentz, and just to be able to play for him now is it's unbelievable.
And I'm grabbing this off the Iowa website. They've got you listed as a linebacker. You come into Iowa as an athlete. Is linebacker the future for Aiden Hall? What have they talked about as far as position?
So last week, Coach Woods came to my house. We had lunch, and he told me basically he thinks that I'm going to come in as a safety for maybe a couple of years, and then he thinks I could eventually mold into a linebacker. But right now, it's just kind of open. I mean, I'll play wherever. There's a multitude of positions, so I'm very fortunate to be in that spot.
And I'm going to read just for anybody who's not familiar with your career. Again, you talked about your history, Harlan. I mean, what a rich history, small town with a rich football history, as you
Yep.
know, Aiden. But for anybody who's not familiar with Aiden Hall, I'm grabbing this off the Hawkeye website. 4 letters in football: running back, wide receiver, linebacker, defensive back. Your prep team won back-to-back state championships as a junior and a senior. Reached his title game as a sophomore. You went 44-4 over your 4-year high school career.
Yeah.
80 rush attempts for 810 yards this past season, 51 receptions for 837 yards, 51 tackles on defense with interception, recovered fumble for a touchdown, 3 kickoff returns for 206 yards, 2 touchdowns, 73 yards on punt returns for over 2,000 all-purpose yards. You also rushed 94 times for 777 yards as a junior, 32 receptions for 755 yards, 53 and a half tackles, 3 interceptions as a junior, 34 receptions for 860 yards. I mean, I can go on and on. You get the gist. You are a stat sheet's dream. So talk about your skill set. You mentioned safety, maybe a potential transition to linebacker eventually. What do you bring to Iowa that you think is special?
Well, a lot of people, they don't know about me is I'm actually super fast. I think I would have ran a 10.6 this year in the 100. But I blew out my hamstring in the district meet. So yeah, I'm very fast. I like to hit people, and I just feel like I'm a smart player, and I'm going to make the smart reads. And I have a knack for making plays on the ball. So yeah, that's what I'll bring. And I'm very hard nosed, hardworking. I'm going to bring it every day. So,
is there anybody on the current roster that you really admire watching? I mean, Cooper DeJean took a lot of guys by storm this year, and he's a small town guy with speed. But is there anybody on the Iowa roster that you've clicked with, maybe on your visits, or look up to?
Definitely Cooper. We actually raced each other my sophomore year a couple times. It was in Denison. I almost beat him. I was probably ahead for the first like 50, 60 meters. And then he got me at the end. But it's cool. Definitely Cooper for sure. So yeah.
And finally, I want to finish up with this. Harlan. We talked about how unique that community is. Would you be the player, the person you are today, Aiden, if it wasn't for Harlan?
Maybe not. My family, we used to live in Denison, which is like 30 minutes away. It's not a very good football program. I guess it's starting to become one now, but at the time we left, it wasn't the best. So then we left, came here. It's definitely helped me a lot. I have a great head coach who has a lot of connections, and just helped me get recruited. So yeah, coming here has definitely helped me a lot. I was able to win 2 state championships. So yeah, I'm very fortunate.
And just to clarify, when did you move to Harlan?
I was in like 3rd grade.
You were in 3rd grade. Okay.
So I have 2 older brothers, and they both went to Denison High School. So we moved like right after that.
Yeah, Denison is a very. I mean, I'm hearing names where you're Denison's straight over on Highway 30, but unless you have a reason to go to Denison, you probably never ever visit the community of Denison. Nice little community, but
Yeah,
it's kind of in the middle of nowhere. And in Harlan,
yeah.
I mean, it's not like you're surrounded. What's that?
It's the same thing. Yeah, there's nothing around here. Harlan's smaller than Denison actually.
So you got a Dollar? Is there a Dollar General?
There's a Dollar General.
You got a Mexican restaurant?
We do. We got a Burger King.
Yeah,
we got a couple other restaurants around, but other than that, there ain't much.
So what does Aiden Hall like to do in his free time?
Play video games, work out. I'm just like every other kid, really.
Yeah, I remember talking to Aaron Graves last year, and I asked him that question. He's like, "Well, what's there to do in Gowrie, Iowa?"
Like, yeah, there's not much.
Yeah,
go down to Omaha every once in a while. That's not that far.
How far is Omaha? An hour and a half?
Like 50 minutes.
Okay, wow, even less than I thought.
That's not bad. So,
well, I'm assuming you're going to be here in the summertime. Is that correct?
Yep, June. Yep.
So, again, just congratulations from us here, Aiden, and thank you for being a part of this show. We look forward to seeing you in the summer, and I know that certainly Kirk Ferentz is going to, if this ever gets back to him, he's going to like hearing you say, "Hey, I just want to work on special teams to start out," because you and I both know, Aiden, that guys get on the field primarily on special teams to start, and boy, a number of highly acclaimed stars from this program that have emerged via special teams. So we look forward to seeing you work hard this next summer and potentially get in the field early.
Yep, thank you. I appreciate that. Thanks for having me on.
Really appreciate Aiden Hall taking the time, and he just screams Iowa football, right? Like his attitude, his demeanor, and whenever there's guys that come from these small towns, and oftentimes they're under recruited, but with Aiden Hall, I mean, he had some good offers. He talked about he probably would have liked to have went up and seen Minnesota, but ultimately he's a big Hawkeye fan, and he's confident in his decision. We're happy he made that decision, and Harlan is rich in football history and just seems to have that mindset of, hey, I want to get on the field early. I want to help where I can. Special teams is usually option A and step A for athletes early in their careers, and a guy who can probably fit in really well to what Phil Parker wants, whether it be on Seth Wallace's crew ultimately or in the defensive backfield at safety. He is a guy with underrated speed, as he talked about, and I'm not going to make a direct comparison to a guy like Cooper DeJean. He's actually, I think, got a little bit better size than a Cooper DeJean. Cooper DeJean, obviously, incredibly athletic, really fast. Aiden Hall is a unique one. I would not be surprised if he ends up being a star here. I really would not be surprised at all if he ends up being really, really good and being an NFL guy in a few years. But he's been a part of this class for quite some time. Obviously made it official in December. Congratulations to Aiden. We look forward to seeing him on campus here in less than 3 months. Of course, the Hawkeyes in the middle of spring football. Aiden not an early enrollee, but he's got an opportunity, I think, to contribute early, given his skill set and certainly his work ethic. All right, so the final order of business on this episode, this edition of Brada's Branded Thoughts, one of the biggest sporting events in Iowa athletics history. And I don't believe that's exaggerating. I don't believe it to be hyperbole by any means, whether you're an Iowa women's basketball fan or not. I don't think anybody can question the notion that Iowa, South Carolina in the Final Four is an opportunity for Iowa and this athletic department to get one of the biggest wins in the history of its university. That is not hyperbole. The Hawkeyes taking on undefeated South Carolina, the number one ranked team in the country. They've been number one all year. and have basically dominated their schedule. If you missed my preview, my 10-minute preview for the Hawks and the Gamecocks earlier this week, it was released earlier this week here on the channel. Certainly go back and check that out. I give 3 keys for Iowa to be able to compete and possibly win, taking down a Goliath of opponents in South Carolina. But I'm here today to give you my official prediction and pick for this game. Do I believe I've had several people ask me this week, do I actually believe Iowa has a chance in this game? And what are the percentage chances Iowa has of winning this game? I had somebody bring up the idea of, maybe being a 25 to 30% chance. I'm certainly not going that high. I'd probably go closer to 5 to 10% chance. Now, that may make me seem like a hater, may make me sound like a hater. Not intended by any means. I'll remind you this, that if you'd asked me about Richmond's chances against the Iowa Hawkeye men in 2022 in the NCAA tournament, I would have probably said about a 5 to 10% chance. That would equal about 1 win per every 10 tries. And I would probably express the same thing for the Hawkeyes against the Gamecocks. But with that being said, let's not forget the Spiders did win that game a year ago. So I'm by no means saying that Iowa can't win this game. I think going away from Greenville, certainly South Carolina knows how to play on the road, but that was a huge home court advantage. They had their first 2 games at home in their home arena. The last 2 games, Sweet 16, Elite 8 rounds, were played in Greenville, not far from South Carolina's campus. The Hawkeyes have already had to play far away from home. Their last 2 rounds coming in Seattle. I think if you play this matchup 10 times, I think South Carolina probably wins 8 or 9. But there is that 1 or 2 that Iowa could tap into if they can figure out how to win those parameters I talked about in my prediction segment earlier this week. With that being said, what do I think will actually happen? I think Caitlin Clark will get hers. I certainly don't think she's going to go for 40, 10, and 10 or whatever it was, or 40, 12, and 10. I don't think South Carolina, given what they give you on the inside and their ability to effectively defend the perimeter, I don't believe Caitlin's going to go for 40. I don't think she's probably even going to go for 30. If she goes for 30, I think Iowa's got a decent chance to win. Obviously, that doesn't tell us how efficient she is. But if she goes for 30, my guess is that she's gotten to the free throw line, which would indicate that Iowa has been effective at drawing fouls. And officiating is going to be an interesting storyline to follow in this game. You do wonder how South Carolina chooses to defend her. I've talked about in the past, I think the best method of trying to defend Caitlin is to get physical with her. Obviously, you're trying to push her off her spots. Monica Sonano, I think, is going to see single team coverage down low, if you will. I don't see a lot of doubles coming from Aaliyah Boston and company. So I do think South Carolina will try to guard Iowa straight up. I don't know why you wouldn't, given the personnel that they have. Somebody said to me after my preview video, they said, well, South Carolina hasn't given up 10 threes all year. You don't know your stuff. They literally just gave up 10 threes like 5 games ago against Arkansas. So get out of here with that nonsense. If you're going to take a shot at me for my take and my prediction, my preview, at least do so with facts. Let's at least work with facts. Do I believe Iowa will hit 10 threes? I'm not sure. I think they'll get close. I don't see South Carolina holding Iowa to 4 or 5 threes. They've done that to a lot of teams. I think UConn hit like 2 threes. Iowa obviously lives and dies off the 3-point line. It will not be an incredibly high volume of threes like it was against Louisville. Louisville doubled down on Sonano a lot. South Carolina won't have to do that. It will make things difficult on people like Gabby Marshall. It will make things difficult on people like McKenna Warnock. I've talked about the importance of Hannah Stolke. I think if Caitlin Clark gets her 20, 25, I think she will, she'll probably end up with somewhere in the range of 7 to 8 assists and 5 to 6 rebounds. And those totals are less than what we've seen in recent history from Caitlin Clark. So will those totals be enough to win? I think those totals will be enough to at least get Iowa close, at least close enough to have a chance in the fourth quarter. And I think if you're the Hawkeyes, that's what you're looking for. You do not want this thing to be a 15 to 20 point deficit heading into the fourth. If you can keep this within 10 to 12 points heading into the fourth quarter, which was basically what Maryland did the other night, it gives you a fighter's chance. Maryland was not able to close the door. They don't have the shooters that Iowa has, and certainly foul trouble hurt them. I'll say this, if Caitlin Clark gets in foul trouble, if Monica Sonano's in foul trouble early, and it forces them to leave the game, it's going to be an uphill battle, and it could get ugly fast. I don't think that's going to happen. I would like to think that Iowa's going to play this differently than Maryland did. Do they have to bring some level of physicality? Absolutely. I don't think you can beat South Carolina without it. But ultimately, you have to be very selective with how you defend, because if you are not defending without fouling, you're really hampering yourself on the other end of the court. I think South Carolina will get theirs. It will not be an incredibly low scoring game. South Carolina's had a lot of those games. I think Iowa's too high volume for a game to be played out that way. South Carolina can throw all the punches on offense as well. I think sometimes we paint them to be just a defensive specialist type of team. They can score points. My score prediction for this game will hinge on those three keys I gave you earlier in the week. And ultimately, can Iowa's stars stay out of foul trouble? Is Hannah Stuelke healthy? My guess is that Hannah will play at least 20 to 25 minutes, which is more than she's played recently. Again, she's been dealing with an ankle injury. And if Czinano and Clark can stay out of foul trouble, I think they can accomplish those three keys I talked about, which, again, if you missed those, go back to that earlier video. With that being said, my prediction is South Carolina 78, Iowa 70. I think the Hawks keep it close enough to where they have a fighter's chance late. I think Caitlin Clark will hit some really difficult shots, and Iowa's not going to go away. I don't see this being like Baylor 2019. I don't think that South Carolina just runs through Iowa by 30. Would I be shocked if that happened? I'd be surprised. I just don't think that's where Iowa is right now. I think they've just got too many weapons. And South Carolina has shown some chinks in the armor. Again, I thought Maryland played pretty well, didn't get a real favorable whistle. Not saying Iowa will get a favorable whistle. And by the way, I've had some South Carolinas come to rip me on my channel because I've blamed the officials for Maryland's loss. I was not doing that. Never did I say that Maryland lost because of officiating. I simply said that I thought the whistles clearly favored Maryland, and the numbers would say that. The stat sheets would say that. Diamond Miller would say that. Brenda Freese would say that. So Iowa's understanding to the fact that they may not get all the whistles, and they may not get a favorable whistle, but Caitlin Clark just got named Naismith Player of the Year. I would hope that they would give her a fair whistle, and ultimately I think Iowa comes up just short of its biggest win in the history of the program. But regardless, if this team wins or loses, what an accomplishment. Getting to a Final Four a year after not making it out of the first weekend. So happy for people like Monica Czinano, who came back for one more chance at a Final Four run, and she has accomplished just that. Would she love to get to the national championship? I think no doubt, but just a great accomplishment for these ladies, and I'm just so happy for Monica Czinano and company to be able to accomplish this. And man, never count this team out. They have an offensive game that is second to none in this sport. And so for anybody who says that this is a walkover and that this game is over before it started, boy, don't buy into that, folks. Iowa's got a shot. Maybe it's not a great shot, but it is a shot. And given some of the attacks that I've received from South Carolina fans, I didn't realize that South Carolina fans are going to take so much offense to a preview video where I just named some keys to beat South Carolina, and I thought I gave plenty of respect to the Gamecocks. It's just amazing. Different fan bases, typically fan bases of schools that are very successful or programs that are very successful. There's always that faction of fans that are annoying and that are overbearing. So it just makes me that much more invested in seeing Iowa pull off a shocker and get to the national championship game where they'll play either Virginia Tech or LSU. Kim Mulkey and the Tigers still in this tournament as well. So we'll see, folks. Post-game coverage with me right here from the Hawkeye of the Storm will tip off Friday evening, 8 p.m. Central Time on ESPN. Appreciate you tuning in for week 215 of Brada's Branded Thoughts. We will talk to you Friday night.